p.m., and I will call this meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Mayor Reichel,
Here?
Pro Tem Knott,
Here.
Trustee Brittenall,
Here.
Trustee Klassen,
Here.
Trustee Flores,
Here.
Trustee Hanrahan,
Here.
Trustee Siebert.
Can everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, be seated. The first item on tonight's agenda is public comments. Persons desiring to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, did you have any phone calls or emails in regards to non-agenda items?
No, I did not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I do not show any raised hands.
All right. And do we have anyone signed in here in the chambers with us?
I think so.
Yes,
All right.
Jackie Harmon.
Okay. Come on up, Jackie, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
I'm Jackie Harmon. I live at 409 Kim Drive of Silt, Colorado. So thank you for having both meetings tonight. They were very informative, and we know, but we have to make decisions. My question is, it is regarding the water and the building that's going on side by side. Is there a consideration until the water bill decisions are made of a moratorium, slowing things down so we don't add added pressure to the current water system? And if not, what's gonna happen if it goes down before we fix the problem? If there is more building in 2023, are they paying the higher tap fee or are they paying the current tap fee?
That'd be very proactive of the board, I feel, and I think the tap fees go up on a date, and that's when they get paid, correct?
The tap fees
The
just went
high-
up January.
Yeah, they went up January 1st.
Is it 1,400?
10.
10 now.
10,500.
How much? I'm sorry.
10,500.
10,500.
The tap fee is 10,000.
Yeah.
So what was it before?
6.
Like 6 or 7.
Okay. And so it was recommended by the engineering company or something to go
We-
up by,
We normally go back and forth.
Yeah, so public comments, we don't
oh,
engage.
Okay.
But we'll definitely take your questions, and we can have staff reach out to you with all the information that you need.
sure.
So
the
more,
comment is a moratorium until the water plant is decided and built, and then how do we pay for it?
okay.
Thank you.
Nobody likes that word, moratorium.
Moratorium.
Ew.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
Is anyone else signed in?
Nope.
Okay. Does anyone else that's in the chambers with us would like to sign in real quick and speak for public comments? All right. Seeing no one else, we will close the public comments and move to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. And it contains the minutes of the December 12th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting, Resolution number 1, Series of 2023, a resolution designating the place for posting public notices per CRS Section 24-6-4022C. Resolution number 2, Series of 2023, a resolution of the Board of Trustees appointing Resource Engineering, Inc. as the town water engineer and Michael Sawyer as the town water attorney of the town of Silt, Colorado. Resolution number 3, Series 2022, a resolution amending the Town of Silt Employee Handbook, revised January 2023. It also has resolution number 4, Series of 2023, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Silt acting by and through its Water Wastewater Enterprise Fund, declaring its official intent to reimburse itself with proceeds of a future borrowing for capital expenditures to be undertaken by the town of Silt, identifying the capital expenditures and the funds to be used for such payments, and providing certain other matters in connection therewith. And number 6 is the reappointment of Justin Brittenall as the Garfield County Weed Advisory Board Representative for the town of Silt 2023. Would anyone like to discuss any of those separately or make a motion?
I have a question.
Good.
On the resolution number 3, just out of curiosity, what created the change in the personnel policy from 6 months to start of employment? And I guess that's the question for Town Clerk McIntyre.
You want me to answer that, Sheila, or no?
Or
If like, we had talked about with the board or with the HR subcommittee on things we could do to help keep people employed here, to keep them from looking for other places to work. And so we opted to go ahead and offer an employee to start accruing vacation as well as retirement from day one instead of giving them a 6-month probationary period. And Amy, you can fill in anything I might have missed there.
It just allows us to be more competitive with other employers in this region.
okay, yeah, I'm fine with it. I was just curious. Thank you.
I'd like to discuss item number 5, resolution number 4, series 2023. So I understand that shows our intent to apply for the loan. Now I know that number 4 there says that the maximum principal amount of obligations expected to be issued for the project is $28 million. My viewpoint right now is we have no way to pay for that. And I would not vote for a $28 million water plant. So with this resolution though, and the application for the loan, can you give us a little bit more information regarding the process of that loan application and then what our obligations are moving forward with that loan application through our discussions of how we're gonna take care of this water treatment plant issue?
Applying for the loan does not create an obligation
Right,
to the town.
okay,
But like I mentioned earlier, news was made tonight that we were talking about applying for that on January 17th.
yeah,
And because of some information we got last week from the CDPHE and DOLA, we've been really encouraged to push that back to June, which we think that's a good call.
Okay.
So we can certainly take that out
I'll make a motion removing that from the consent.
for
agenda.
now, and we can, put more information together for that conversation.
Okay.
If you like.
Anything else, guys? All right, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, excluding number 5.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem not to approve items number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 of the consent agenda and remove number 5, resolution number 4, series 2023. That was seconded by Trustee Clausen. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations, Justin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's actually some really interesting conversations and things over at that meeting.
Glad you're into
A lot
it.
of landowners and whatnot, and so it's definitely interesting stuff.
We're good. Thank you, Justin.
Nice. Next item on the agenda is conflicts of interest. Says Attorney Sawyer is going to give us a little presentation, and we'll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought with it being the beginning of the year, that it would be a good idea to give a quick refresher on conflicts. As you all are aware, on every board agenda, one of the mandatory items is says conflicts of interest. And sometimes we just kind of glaze over that because you see it on every single agenda. But I wanted to, again, just refresh your memories as to what constitutes a conflict, things to be paying attention to as you're reviewing the agenda items in advance of the meetings. So the first thing I would note, you as a board, you police your own conflicts. So I don't get to say who has a conflict. Jeff doesn't get to say that. Rather, you as a board, you're the governing board, you determine when there's a conflict. I will tell you, in all my years of being a municipal attorney, I've never once seen a board have to vote on whether a conflict exists, because people generally self-recuse. And our conflict laws very much are based upon individual board members acting in good conscience to identify when they have a conflict of interest and to self-recuse. When a recusal happens, the recommended protocol is that that board member not participate in any discussions or try to influence the outcome of the decision. And usually the board member will leave the board chambers and go sit out in the common area until the decision's been made. The provisions of the town code and the town charter as they relate to conflicts of interest, they're based on the Colorado Code of Ethics. The charter and the Code of Ethics, as well as the Colorado Code of Ethics, focus on what are called financial interests. So a lot of things in life could be interpreted as, oh, you have a conflict because you know so-and-so, or your kids attend the same school, or you go to the same church or something like that. Those aren't conflicts of interest. If that were the case, nobody could ever serve on a board, because we're all members of a community, we have interactions, we have friends. So what the law defines as a conflict of interest really comes down to financial interests. And financial interests are that you have a financial stake in the outcome of a decision, or that a direct family member has a financial stake in the outcome of a decision. And direct family members include your parents, your brothers and sisters, and then any children you may have. A financial interest can be present, or it can be prospective in the future if the possibility of financial interest in the outcome of a decision has come to a certain point. So if you have been in discussions with somebody who's coming in before the board about forming some kind of business venture that has something to do with the outcome of the decision, you have a conflict, you need to disclose it and recuse under those circumstances. Another thing that's not a conflict of interest, and when we do our biannual ethics training, we've mentioned this before, is are items that are your particular interest is really not distinguishable from what's called the general public interest or the interests at large. And an example of that is, you live on a street, there's a proposed subdivision at the end of the street. The subdivision will increase traffic on the street. So there is some potentially detrimental interest to having that subdivision go in. But your interest in that situation is really no different than anybody else who lives on the street. It's just simply the public interest of everybody that happens to live on Oak Street. To which the subdivision may or may not end up at the end. And so that, your things where you're affected in a general way, not dissimilar to that of your neighbors, as the general public interest, that doesn't constitute a conflict. So at the end of the day, I've included the town code and the charter section involving conflicts. And what I, encourage, if anybody ever has a question on a conflict matter, please let Jeff know. Jeff will get in touch with me. We'll talk it through. It's always best if you can give me a few days' notice so we can work with you on fleshing that out. So if you have any questions, happy to answer. Otherwise, you get to declare if you have any conflicts tonight.
I do have a couple of questions. And it's more a clarification. Okay, I'm vice president of the Silt Historical Park, and to me, I kind of feel that trying to bring that to meetings, to me, is kind of a conflict. But if I was here, and it's strictly a volunteer thing, nobody up there makes any money. But if I'm trying to convince the board that the town needs to donate more money to the park, is that
you would not want to be
conflict?
sitting
Yeah.
on that side of the
Okay,
dais. in
okay,
that
so yeah, just for
circumstance.
clarification, okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously I'll continue to, keep those separate.
You can, as board members, you don't lose your right as a citizen to come in and talk, to the board. So as the vice president, if you're making a presentation from this side of the dais, as vice president of the historic park, you come in and you can present in that manner. Similarly, occasionally we have situations where spouses will come in because they have a concern about something going on. You may want to consider if that taints your ability to act objectively, particularly in a quasi-judicial situation. We've talked about those. Those are permits, licenses coming before the board for an approval. But again, no one's family gives up their First Amendment rights to petition the government simply because you've chosen to volunteer for public services, sitting on the Board of Trustees.
And then my second question is, kind of based on my comments last meeting, how are employees or, contract people, how is that considered, or is it?
So again, just as nobody gives up their rights to comment on matters of public business because they are on the board or they contract with the government, similarly, you don't give up your right to submit an application. If one of you were to buy a vacant lot in Silt and want to build a house, just because you're on the Board of Trustees doesn't mean you can't go in and pull a building permit. Or seek a variance, which would require, the matter coming before this body for a decision. Again, what's important to note is that the conflict be declared, and that person wall themselves off from trying to influence the decision beyond simply presenting in the public meeting. So in other words, if I bought a lot in Silt and wanted a variance to build into the setback or something like that, it would be improper for me to talk to Mark and take him out for a beer and say, hey, that variance, we've really got to find a way to get that approved, or to talk to any of you on the board in that manner. So, but that being said, as a property owner, I can submit an application, wall myself off from the ability to influence that decision, and present in the normal course.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any questions for our attorney?
Not for me.
Other questions? Nope. Okay, then for this meeting, does anyone have any conflicts of interest with any agenda items?
None here.
None here.
I don't.
I've got none either. All right, thank you, Attorney Sawyer. Do we have any agenda changes tonight by the staff?
No, sir.
Okay, anything by the board?
No, sir.
All right. All right, then we will jump into the second reading of ordinance number 16, series 2022, an ordinance of the town of Silt, Colorado, approving the rezoning for previously annexed land once known as the Shanholzer annexation and now known as Autumn Ridge. This is a public hearing, and I will turn it over to Planner Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first reading was held at a public hearing on December 12, and you made a motion to approve that ordinance by a vote of 4-3. The applicants are here tonight as members of the Zeller family, David Moore and Derek Walter. Just to disclose, Derek is the town's contract engineer. I'm just going to go touch on a couple things, hand it over to Joy to see if she would like to make any presentation, then have it open for questions, and then for the public hearing itself. We went through this before, and Sheila, could you hand over the, make me a co-host for a second?
You're already co-host.
I am
You can
co-host.
just share your screen.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Excuse me there.
Oh, I don't know. I can go ask the chief real quick. Would you go do that? Do you feel comfortable?
Okay. This is a quick location map. This property, now called Autumn Ridge, is a little bit more than 3 acres in size. This is the site right here, and it is zoned right now R1. The closest nearby property that everybody would know, right where my cursor is right here, this is the old Silt Cafe, and right where it says B2 right there, that's basically the Red River Inn. And come and go is over further to the map down below here. The proposal is to go from R1 to the R3 zone district. As you can see from this map, it is surrounded by residential properties on the north, and they are zoned R2 and R3. Directly to the east is a small commercial property zone B1. B2 is zoned for the Red River Inn and the Old Silt Cafe, and on the west we also have some R3 and some R2. For further location, this is Cactus Drive, and this is Valley Drive, and this is Highway numeral 6 and 24. At the last meeting, I went over a number of items quite in detail. For tonight, there'll be a second reading for the rezoning ordinance, and then if that goes forward, there'll be a hearing for the final plat for a minor subdivision. That's to split into 2 lots at this point. One lot would be for the existing single-family house, and then the next lot would be for future development, and that would be subject to a multifamily site plan review or a further major re-subdivision. Anything more than a single family or a duplex on that site. There were no conditions of approval, or should I say no things required by the annexation agreement or the ordinance of annexation when this was annexed to the town in 1990. So the findings were they didn't need to have any conditions. Past history of the site, there was an extensive application for a PUD rezoning and a major subdivision, and that was for 34 lots, multifamily in nature. And then there was, I'll just call it a flex lot. It could be some commercial development, or it could be up to another 12 residential units. I did go over the utilities and access, and I'll touch on those when we get to the annexation itself, if we move forward to that. I did go over at the last meeting the differences between R1, R2, and R3. If you want to go over that again, I'll be happy to answer those questions, but I think I did answer those comments then. For the comprehensive plan, this is the downtown area. And the downtown, under the present comprehensive plan, assumes they'd like to see that go down eventually to 16th Street and have downtown style improvements. They'll be able to do that all the way on the north side to 16th. On the south side, probably not, because of floodplain and some fall off in topography. And to let you know that the downtown area, that supports the zone districts of B1, B2, R2, and R3. And ironically, in a way, this site right now, R1, is, it's sort of a spot zoning, and usually you see spot zoning comment when someone goes in and zones something, they want something totally different in the middle of commercial, they'll put R1, who knows what they'll propose. But this is a spot zoning, and staff supports a multifamily family designation, in this case to R3, because utilities are there, because the access is there, it meets the goals of the comprehensive plan. And at the last meeting, I went over the criteria point by point, 17.78.020, C, number 3, B. And there were 6 items for the review criteria, and staff found that the rezoning application is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the stated purposes of the proposed zone district. Utilities and adequate access are available, and it should not result in significant adverse effects upon the natural environment. So I recommended that the board rezone the property R1 to R3. The planning commission held a hearing, I believe it was September the 6th, and they did not recommend, or they recommended that the property not be rezoned at this time. And with that, I'll hand it over to you for questions, and then if the applicant could make comments as they see fit.
I don't really have any comments. My opinion's the same. I'll vote to approve the rezoning from R1 to R3.
I don't have.
I have a question. So after the house is sold off, how many acres does that leave for the development?
I believe it's around 2.7, approximately 2.8.
Yeah, I believe so.
What it was. I don't have that paper in front of me. I was able to yesterday.
And we can go over that with the subdivision if you'd like.
I have a quick question. Do you have any details on why P&Z voted the way that they did or made the recommendation they did? Can you provide any?
Public input.
Yeah, it was really public input. There were, I'd say there were 15 or 16 public comments, all to the negative. And they were hoping that the applicant, this is just me looking into what they were thinking. They didn't state this, but they were hoping that perhaps it would come back with a further development plan, or perhaps R2, or perhaps a downtown mixed density zone district which allows development at R2 densities. And then if you would like to do commercial, that's a special use permit. We have, that's an overlay zone district, and that exists out right around here in this area for the downtown. But they did not go in there and say it should be X or it should be Y. It was, they did not want to move forward with the rezoning at this time.
Thank you.
So I'm still, I feel that this site is still, it does need to be an R3 zone district. The spot zoning of R1 doesn't fit what's here. So looking at this as the individual pieces that come to us through this whole process, R3 is the best zone district for this piece of property.
As I stated at the previous meeting, I'm in the same opinion as the mayor, which
So
doesn't
I'm,
happen all the
I'm in
time.
the same opinion as last meeting. 48 homes and 2.7 acres is on Highway 6 is not doable. We've had 2 of our fail-safes to help provide good economic development. P&Z and the citizens have been against this. And I think my job as a board member is to side with our citizens and do what's in their best interest.
I'm done, yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, so the board will deliberate shortly, but we do have the applicants present as well as a public hearing.
Yeah, and the public hearing should be open, so once they speak, take comment.
Okay.
I think you can only have one screen share and check.
Mark, can you,
Oh, yep,
stop sharing? Thank you.
I'm off.
I just recently needed reading glasses and it's really upsetting. Like, I'm all.
Who are you signed in as? Because you have to also be a co-host. You can't just be a participant to share.
She signed in under Dusty's laptop that we're using in Chambers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It says host disabled participant shares screen sharing.
I have now made that one a co-host so that you can share.
Okay, let's try one more time. got it. Okay. There we go. All right, well, thank you again for being here, serving our community. I'm not going to go nearly as long as I did last last month. I do want to actually talk about the last. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Joy Zeller, part of the group presenting.
And I'm Derek Walter, engineer for the project and owner.
Thank you. You know, at the P&Z meeting, to be honest, we thought it was going to be a slam dunk because we presented about 15 years ago a higher density PUD subdivision, had complete unanimous unanimous approvals throughout the whole thing. So we did not present to them also what we presented to you. So there was a lot of emotions in the public comments. A lot of those emotional comments were based on we don't want increased traffic on our street. And that kind of confused us because we're trying to keep the traffic off of your street by having a main street entrance. So I think that it was the emotions and the public interest, and we always want to listen to the public. We want to listen to you guys too, the direction from the staff, because we want something that, you know, neighbors typically, you know, you're going to have some people that are upset because nobody really wants anybody building in their backyard. We have that down in Grand Junction going on right now. But anyway, I think it was also the fact that we did not present what we did to you all, because there was a few comments from the P&Z afterwards when they were having their comments that made us realize that maybe they didn't understand the comprehensive plan and what they should be basing their decisions on. So we do have our piece of property that we believe is the right place for R3 zoning. We have R3 zoning directly above us, so it matches with the zoning map. We're not asking for anything that's outrageous. I mean, really, the R1 sitting on Main Street is probably more outrageous, and just like the staff report says, it really does not match the comprehensive plan, even though I know some people would prefer it to stay as R3. I think that also R2 feels a lot more palatable to some people, and this is where R3 is in this main Silt area. We have about 4-to-1 ratio. Did I say R3? Sorry, R2. There's a lot of R's going on. There's about 4-to-1 ratio of R2 zoning in the main Silt area, like the main area of Silt. So we have a lot of R2 in the town of Silt. What we have an imbalanced amount of is R3. And even in the R3 areas that we do have, the slight areas of R3, the great majority of it is not used as R3 as well. So I think from a zoning perspective, it really makes sense, not only because we have that R3 right above us, but also we just don't need more R2, especially on Main Street, when we have 4 times as much R2 within the town. Also, even though R2 does sound more palatable, the logistics of it, and if that's what, you know, everybody chooses, you know, we could do it, but this truly is the most profitable and equitable way for us to do R2. And it's not good for Main Street. It's not good for Cactus Drive. It's not good for Valley Drive. It increases the traffic on Main Street, but it also increases the traffic on those other streets. And it provides a very aesthetic view from Main Street, because when you have single-family properties, especially on Main Street, you're going to put up a privacy fence because you don't want everybody, you know, that's walking along Main Street to have access to your backyard. Even if they didn't put up a privacy fence, you're still going to see everything in these people's backyards. Let's say, okay, we're not going to approve that. We will put it on Main Street. You're still going to have the same issue. Backyards will be facing Main Street. So even if we do create the entrance on Main Street, which is quite a bit more expensive and means that we lose 2 full lots, you're still going to have a bunch of privacy fences along it. So it really, even though it sounds like a better benefit to the town of Silt, It really isn't, and it's not a benefit to Cactus Drive and Valley Drive. And we heard the people's concern, and it would be the concern that I would have too. But having us do R2 is not going to benefit those neighbors. And it really kind of is like, is that what we want? And I don't think any of us actually do want that. R3 not only matches the comprehensive plan from start to end, but it provides much more open space, kind of community spacing. It removes, and I don't know exactly what we're going to do. We want to hear back from the town, the staff, from you, from the community, to try to make it as the best that we can. We don't want an asphalt jungle, either. But this provides so much more walkability. It provides access to public services, and it just really creates a much more aesthetically appealing downtown area. However, that's all fine and dandy, and that's an opinion, and I feel like a very strong argument for it. However, it really has to be based on the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is used by developers like us to understand what the town wants as a whole. It's also used by the staff to say, is this appropriate? So when we purchase and invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a property, we look at this comprehensive plan and say, can we do, and what can we do that the community as a whole, that the town has come together and said, this is what we want from you. And so we've painstakingly gone through the comprehensive plan and based our submission and what we present, making sure that we are in compliance to the plan, because we know that that is what the citizens agreed upon. That is what the staff agreed upon. That's what everyone agreed upon. And so really our decisions should be listening to the community members, but through the comprehensive plan. And sometimes if we don't use something like a governing document or a governing plan like this, then your decisions are based on emotions or what you personally feel is appropriate or best. Like I could think that, I don't know, like a skyscraper, and is best for that. But the comprehensive plan says no. And so we have to use the comprehensive plan so we're all on the same page. I pointed out pretty much pages throughout the comprehensive plan. It's 53 pages, and I hope you all know the comprehensive plan well, because your decisions, determine whether people can make money or not, or their investments, end up being a flop or not. But two real big points that I think are really key is growth from the core, the very first policy in the comprehensive plan, promote compact development patterns by encouraging infill and new development within Tier 1 primary growth area. Our property is Tier 1 primary growth area. And so we should be, as a whole community, whether it's you making decisions, us presenting, the town staff giving their recommendation, we should all be promoting compact developments in the Tier 1 primary growth area, regardless of our own personal opinions. I manage a couple HOAs, and I don't always agree with the rules that are established. I personally, like for example, I like chickens. My HOA down in Grand Junction, they don't allow chickens. And when people are upset about that, when I have to enforce it, they're like, well, I think that's stupid. And inside I'm thinking, I kind of do too. I like chickens. But my role in that position is not to base my decision on my emotions or my opinion, but on the governing document. This is the governing document in this particular situation. The next one, promote a progressive, vibrant mix of uses, including high-density residential in downtown Silt. So this highlighted in red area is what is considered downtown Silt, Tier 1 primary growth area. And Mark mentioned this. It's supposed to be B1, B2, R2, and R3. This area has B1, B2, R2, quite a bit of R2, and no R3. So I'll kind of take it off there, and you can see it kind of cuts up north, and it includes quite a bit of medium density R2, but it has no high density residential zoning. So we should be promoting high-density residential in downtown Silt, whether or not we feel that that's where we would want it personally. And I think how much more important is it that we approve this as R3 when our comprehensive plan says that we need to be promoting high-density residential in downtown Silt, and we currently don't have any high-density residential in downtown Silt. So that's kind of where I want to leave it. You know we have to come back for a lot more approvals. We do feel that we're going to get our approval tonight. I wanted to just talk real quick because we would like to understand, you know, we want to come and get obviously unanimous approvals. And when we're looking at coming back and there was so much almost animosity kind of coming towards us with this proposal when we feel like we match so in line with the comprehensive plan, it's a little concerning because it's very, very expensive. We took money out on our own personal homes to buy this property because we bought it knowing and having confidence in a town that followed their own plan. And I would prefer, I feel like I know where everybody stands on their votes. I would ask, if you don't mind, for the no votes, if you could give us a little bit of direction on how you arrive at your no vote in comparison to the comprehensive plan by using the comprehensive plan. Last month, I presented about 15 points on how we match the comprehensive plan. If you could even give us maybe 2 points on how we don't match the comprehensive plan and how you're basing your vote upon that, that would help us to be able to better construct our next steps in, figuring out what we need to do to gain your vote, because that's what we would prefer to do. So, and I even think for other developers that are looking at Silt, I think it would help them as well. We know that you guys have water issues right now. Obviously, we're not going to build if we think that we can't build and get water. We have enough building, we heard that. We're not going to build if we think that the market's saturated. If we do, that's on us. That's called free market. And I don't believe our government should be in a place where they're dictating free market. The free market should do that. If we overbuild or build too fast or build, when there's too much inventory, we just lose our shirt, and we lose our investment. So I thank you guys for your opinion or your votes and your opinions. I think it's good. We learn a lot from everybody's differing opinions. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the public hearing next, and then we'll come back to a discussion by the board. So I'm going to go ahead and it's 8:07 p.m. and I will open up the public hearing for agenda item ordinance number 16, series 2022. Persons desiring to make public comments on this agenda item, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or is Sheila any phone calls or emails in regards to this agenda item?
No, sir, I did not hear from anyone.
Okay.
I do not show any raised hands.
All right. And would anybody in the chambers like to speak to this agenda item?
It says 13 on here.
So just for a point of clarification, in the packet, this is shown as ordinance number 13, series 2022, instead of ordinance number 16.
Which is what our agenda shows.
So the agenda shows 16, the packet shows 13, so.
16 is correct.
16 is correct, okay.
Okay. All right. So nobody in the chambers would like to speak to this agenda item? Okay. The time is 8:08 p.m. and I will close the public hearing and open it to further discussion by a board.
Okay. Derek? Me? I'll go. The comprehensive plan is in line with what's best for our citizens and what they want. They have expressed concerns on our overdevelopment of our community already. They have specifically expressed concerns about this development. To vote on this, to me, just so the developer can make a bigger profit, is called selling out our community. And that's why I will not be voting for this. It's a sellout of our community.
I'll vote yes for this. I just completely disagree with what Sam's saying. Like, R3 makes sense where it is. The comprehensive plan was put in place for the development of Silt. I've said this time and time again. Silt's going to develop. Like, Silt's an awesome town. It's a great place to live. People want to raise their kids here. I don't want to stop that. And I want to be responsible for that. So on that downtown core, if you look at some of the other developments that run right along that main street, those fences and all that, they're beat up. They don't look that good. It's an eyesore. R3 makes sense here. That's it. I'll vote for this to be R3. It just makes sense. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's not even about fences. It's not about that. It's the comp plan does not say we should have R1 in our downtown district. We've discussed it as a board, and I'm not even looking at what the potential density could be on this. We've discussed this as a board that we need affordable housing. Without having high density, you're not going to get affordable housing. So I've heard people argue we need affordable housing, but they don't want high density. You can't have both of those things. It doesn't work. So
I disagree with affordable housing on the backs of our citizens that are here.
What does that mean?
That means the taxpayers that have put the money in here are gonna get this 48 units and 80 something vehicles on their Highway 6. That's, you know what I mean? They've already expressed concerns. So
I think the
I'm not
majority of the
saying not
concerns of the
stopping
people that
development.
came to our meeting was the potential traffic on Cactus and Valley Drive.
Which it doesn't happen with R3.
Well, but we have control over that too, because we get to vote on the way that that's developed and whether we like it or not. So the feedback that I got from people that were here the first time in the public hearing, I think they got more information that, okay, hey, like, one, this is just rezoning, but it's not going to impact the traffic on my street. So I don't see that concern.
this will be impacting Highway 6 there.
The highway, man. Like, it's a highway. It's made for
Whereas-
cars.
Yeah, but not this big. Like, so have you don't go that way to home, do you?
I drive that.
You go up
I
there
drive on that
16,
road 15 times a
the
day. I'm a
traffic
realtor.
there,
I'm
the
I'm
hazard
everywhere.
already there. And I'm not trying to stop development. We got a duty to our citizens, a smart economic development.
That's what this
We
is.
have never, this board has never said no to a developer. In fact, we gave a developer $200,000 just to be nice.
No, that's it.
And
that is
that's,
so
and
not
this
right,
is a sellout of this
Sam.
board. It's a full-on sellout of this board. And that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, I'll be voting yes on this. And I completely disagree with the whole "just be nice" air quotes.
You stood up and said, I want to be nice. Let's give him something. That's
you find that
exactly
you
right.
find that tape,
I
Sam.
can, I will.
I said I want to.
Come on,
give them
guys.
something.
I want to be nice
Okay.
and give him something.
that's completely off topic.
There's nothing to do with
Off topic.
Yep.
But selling out the community is topic. Let's get back to that.
Okay.
I think the challenge with the extremes is you end up with all or nothing, right? You end up with no development, or you end up with open season on development. I think there are certain areas where we have to compromise, and this is one of them. It's in the right location for density. To Mayor Pro Tem's point, we have future conversations where we can control the development and ensure that those needs are met. I think, given the comprehensive plan and the way it is, this makes sense in this location at this time. It's a reasonable outcome. I don't expect everyone to like it, but it's not about it being unanimous. It's about it being the best outcome for the largest portion of the town's population. I totally respect and appreciate the opinions of those who showed up at P&Z. I'm not sure they reflect the larger portion of the population as a whole. We talked about water earlier. All these things have to be paid for. And if we continue to constrain development, how are those things going to get paid for? That's the balancing act that this body has in place right now. And I think we have to compromise in certain places. This, to me, is one of them, and that's why I'm going to vote for it.
R2 would be a compromise.
It can be
Yeah, that's
R3, and
it.
it doesn't have anything to do with what the potential density. It's a potential density. They could, and I don't want to go into an agenda item other than this, but the density that it's approved for doesn't mean that's what we have to let them build.
But there's,
Well,
that's
that's true.
what
I mean,
they're telling us they want to
he's
build.
right.
They've already, that's what they're coming for. The
Yeah.
R3, so they can build this high density 48 homes. That's what the whole
But that's not
thing
what we're
comes
voting
to.
on today.
And
Yeah, but then that's what it leads to. This vote is what it all leads to, is the beginning of it all.
And we have a say in every step of that process.
No, I,
Trustee Clausen?
I agree. I mean, my only comments are, is I'm concerned about, you know, if there is a fire, I'm concerned about one way in, one way out. And the more homes you stick in that with one way in, one way out, you know, the more, I'm not saying it would happen, but the more problems that could happen if everybody has to get out in a hurry. So those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Nothing else?
Any other
all I
further
had.
discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance number 16, series 2022, an ordinance of the town of Silt, Colorado, approving the rezoning for previously annexed land once known as the Shanholzer annexation and now commonly known as Autumn Ridge from R1 to R3.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Knott to approve the second reading of ordinance number 16, series 2022, an ordinance of the town of Silt, Colorado, approving the rezoning for previously annexed land known as the Shanholzer annexation and now commonly known as Autumn Ridge. That rezoning would be from R1 to R3. That motion was seconded by,
Take your time.
I can't even think right now.
Trustee Hanrahan?
Trustee Hanrahan.
It's the beard. It makes me look
Beard
like
makes you
someone
look
else. Is that what it is?
By Trustee Hanrahan. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 4-2.
4-2, okay.
Next up, we have resolution number 5, series 2023, a resolution approving the final plat for the Autumn Ridge minor subdivision in the town of Silt, Garfield County, state of Colorado, subject to conditions, which I guess we'll learn what those conditions are. And I will turn this over to Planner Jane.
Needs to have the control again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicants are the same as before, so. And Amy or Sheila, could you am I ready to be the host now again?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll stop other people. We up? Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay, this is a public hearing for the final plat for a minor subdivision. The Planning Commission looked at this application also on September 6th. For a minor subdivision, the Planning Commission is the decision-making body for the sketch plan. Are there utilities, are there access, and those types of things. It does not come before the board. They recommended approval with 5 conditions. And they were all representations of the applicant shall be considered conditions of approval, that the plat for the minor subdivision have an adequate water line easement, I'll go over that in just a minute, that no further development with the exception of one single-family house can occur on Lot 2 unless the applicant goes through a site plan review process or other type of land use application, including a PUD rezoning, a subdivision with detailed engineering, etc. That the water rights be clarified at the time of any development or future land use proposal with lot number 2. And that the representations of the letter of September 1 from Boundaries Unlimited be followed as appropriate for the final plat of this minor subdivision. Related to those conditions, I ask that the density be slightly different if they do not go forward and have any kind of site plan review. Site plan review doesn't start until you have 3 multifamily units, so they could theoretically have a single family or duplex on that site. And we have, it looks like we have clarity on the rights that go with the ditch, how much water that translates to, et cetera, et cetera. I already went over the past history of the site. And as I said before, the minor subdivision, the board is the final decision-making body. The property, we have already touched base on that, and when I'm looking here at Lot 2 would end up being, hold on a second here, 2.89 acres, okay? To give a little bit of framework, you saw in some of the earlier sketches a connection to Cactus Drive and Valley Drive. Just so you know, they're two cul-de-sacs, and when the Mizuchi annexation came in I believe 1974, there were easements, utility easements and access easements. So if necessary, utilities could be bought from the south to the north and vice versa, and that the two properties here could be connected and access flow through one to the other and eventually on to Highway numeral 6 and 24. In terms of detail, this is just the first part. I would say you will see something more in the future. This will be the boundary of Lot 1. There's the house right here. The proposal is to change the access from right over in this area and come in directly from 6 and 24. There's a garage right here. The garage will be placed on Lot 2, and there would be an access easement for people occupying Lot 1 to come in and park in that area. In terms of utilities, there is a water main right here, and it's a town main, and it goes on to the southwest aspect of the property. And there should be an easement there. The contract engineer, not this contract engineer, but the one we hired, Mountain Cross, suggested that perhaps it should be analyzed about, moving the water line. I think you have enough expenses to deal with. I don't think you need to use just declare an easement. These applicants are willing to grant an easement. So I think that's the way to go. The sewer line is right here. All the other utilities are along Highway 6 and 24. There is electric, which goes to Lot 1, and that needs to be moved within an easement itself. And just so everybody knows this, there is that town water main proceeds along the west property boundary and then along the edge of the ditch and then up into the Cactus Drive area itself. We've shown you some location maps before, and I've gone over some of the location of the utilities. In terms of access permit, there was an access permit obtained years ago for a potential development that did not go forward. There was an access permit received for this application. They had an extension, and that expired in December 8th, I believe. So the applicant would need a new access permit. Related to ditch and irrigation, the property comes with 0.39 acres. I won't get into how many gallons that conforms to. It is in the correspondence with the applicant, Derek Walter, and that is in this packet itself. And just so you know, they tend to use a single head gate with the stilling basin, and each lot would have an individual pump, and they would sort of share time for irrigation itself. The irrigation plan and technical details have been supplied to the ditch company. They need to say that the easement is adequate and that the technical ways that they provide or they are proposing to provide the irrigation work. We have not got that information, or we have not received it since we sent it to them. The geotech report was already submitted, was submitted last time, and that still is good. I went over the easements, and basically, at least right now, there's been no indication that the development would connect to Valley Drive or Cactus Drive. Depending on how it's laid out, it may be good to have an emergency access, not a daily access, but have some kind of bollard or Knox box or something else, so that if they needed, either side needed to go through and get away in case of an emergency, that could happen, but it would not be, at least this time, for daily traffic. And I've gone into some of the easements here, but I don't think we need to really go forward with that and look at that. I'll be happy to go through in detail if you would like. You've been here long enough tonight. Mineral rights, the mineral rights, should I say, advertisements were given by state statute to potential mineral rights owners. And there is a letter from the applicant's attorney in there, and that seems to conform to the state statute. Some other additional comments? Mountain Cross Engineering did raise the point of perhaps moving the water main. I've addressed that. Public Works comment. New access and a driveway road into Lot 2. Public Works would want to call this out. If it's going to be a private driveway, it's going to remain a private driveway. And that concept that you saw from the applicant, that would really be basically like a condo development, a multifamily development. Here's your driveway, there's a parking. That would not be a town right-of-way in the future. We'll have to see what they propose and if they propose anything in the future. The town attorney comment, there were a number of comments from the town attorney, and the applicant gave a point-by-point comment to that, and that's a little, the green highlights you saw in the letter from Attorney Sawyer here. Most of the comments were related to plat notes. They were related to the fact that right now 4 individual owns the property. They propose to have an LLC. It's, sort of proper documentation on the plat itself. That ditch easement does need to be reviewed by the Lower Cactus Valley Ditch Company. We should have that sewer service line, the location of it, checked for Lot 1. We think it comes out directly to the south into the highway. It wouldn't need an easement for that service line, but that should be checked. There's a 10-foot easement from Public Service Company that's noted on the title commitment. What I've heard from the applicant, that actually exists south of Highway 6 and 24. If that's the case, then that should be removed from the title commitment. That analysis still needs to be finalized. I'm still waiting for comments from Mountain Cross on the civil details on sheets C1 and C2. There aren't many of them, but that should be a condition of approval if the contract engineer says some modifications need to be made. And the shares in the Lower Cactus Valley ditch need to be dedicated to the town, and then they're leased back to the property holders, the HOA, and that'll be at no cost except for the cost of the assessments, and the applicant has indicated that they will comply with that. But I've already gone over the fact of the garage and the access easement and the possibility for a future land use application. There will be a subdivision improvements agreement, even though this would be a very minor document. That should come in, assuming you approve today's resolution. And if and when they do come in for another land use application, site plan review or whatever, there should be a full-on development agreement at that time also. So in summary, it's staff opinion that the final plat for the minor subdivision is consistent with the sketch plan, and that the majority of issues defined above are in compliance with town code, and those recommendations made by town staff and their reviewing agencies. Any outstanding conditions can be taken care of with conditions attached in or to the subdivision improvements agreement. Staff's recommend that you approve the final plat for the Autumn Ridge subdivision with the following conditions. 1, adoption of Resolution 5, Series of 2023, that a new access permit be obtained from CDOT as part of any development, and that is also included in the resolution. And that any conditions from the Lower Cactus Valley Ditch Association be considered conditions of approval and be included in the SIA. When I wrote that draft resolution, I did not have in there any of the technical conditions for the Cactus Valley Ditch, just that they review and say that the ditch easement as proposed is adequate. So I have a suggested motion in there, and at this point, I am open for any questions, and then the next step would be to have a presentation from the applicant, followed by the public hearing.
I have a couple questions.
All right.
On there it says 3 water taps. Why only see 1? Where are the other 2 water taps at? Just
Why do you address that one, Derek?
So, when the property was annexed, part of the annexation deal and the easements that were granted for the city to put, or for the town to put the water line through this property, when that all occurred, the town agreed that in exchange for the right for the easement, they would provide the annexation and provide the water, those water taps that you're referencing, the water taps and the sewer tap. One water tap is currently used for the existing house, as well as the one sewer tap. We still own 2 unused water taps. We did go through all this in our previous application during that, and I believe since then we've been charged for, it's a monthly fee for maintaining the rights of those taps. Basically, we pay 50% or something like that, or it's like $30 a month we have to pay to own those taps that aren't being used.
okay. And then I guess clarification, the water for lot 1 comes up here. The meter pit and meter is here. So there is a line that goes here. This down here that says there is a meter pit there, but that's an irrigation drain right there. And there is an irrigation tap right here. So this isn't where the water service to the home comes in. It comes in from here.
That's interesting to know, because when we went through the first project, where I have it shown as where Public Works, which is not our current Public Works, told me all of that information was, all of those lines were.
Yeah.
So that's why it's mapped the way that it is.
Yes.
If it's different, then we'll have to install
It's
it.
different because I've replaced the battery in that meter up in the corner before. So that's where the water comes from for that house, is up there.
Okay.
Yes, and I didn't even catch that on
Yeah.
when I looked at the plan.
And my other question is, does there need to be some sort of easement for the service line, or would that be moved? I'm sorry.
We can get to that.
Yeah.
There will need to be an easement if you're subdividing the property.
Okay, sorry. I you know.
If they're not moving it
Yeah.
or coming in from, the main and the highway, there would need to be an easement for it.
Okay.
There will need to be an easement on the plat because the water line crosses the property, and once the plat is recorded, they could sell parcel A away. There has to be an easement to get the water to parcel B. So the plat, that'll have to be an additional plat or an additional
Yeah.
condition of approval. that
You'll
they add a
decide what to
water
do
line.
with it. You may want to move that line and, yeah.
And then
Well, again, when the plat is recorded, there's gonna have to be an easement on it, because at that point, the properties are separately conveyable.
Yeah.
If they wanna move it in advance of the plat, they can do that, but that would seem silly.
We'll most likely install a new tap
Okay.
using our existing rights.
Yeah.
And no easement would be needed. This is new information to me tonight, because again, we went through all this with Public Works, prior to Trey being there.
Well, I
And
apologize for
this is all the
surprising you with
information
it,
we
but-
were given as owners of the property. So if it's different, if it's found that it is different, we'll make the necessary adjustments prior to filing a plat, because we don't want to encumber Lot 2 with an unnecessary easement.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Chris. I
Oh, sure.
totally spaced it when I looked at this the first time, because I knew that was up there too.
Yeah.
Because I was out there with you one day.
Yeah, so, and I guess my only question is the irrigation rights. I know they'll be dedicated to the town and leased back, but shouldn't it be tied into the town's irrigation system?
So at the time of site plan, for the big parcel, they will have to make a decision about whether they're going to develop their own raw water irrigation system for this property, so a pump off the canal, or whether they're gonna tie into the town's master raw water irrigation. And we will hold the ditch shares, which again would be available if they develop a separate raw water system, they'll be leased back so that they can be used on the property. If they're not, if they tie into the town's existing system, then the town would simply add that or keep that as part of its portfolio that it uses to provide raw water irrigation.
I mean, I'd rather see it tied into the town, but that's just my opinion. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions before we let the applicant present? Okay. You guys are up again.
Alrighty, well, I don't know if it's necessary to put in another slideshow for this. I believe what's up on the screen will suffice for the conversation. So thank you again for letting us present this to you. We got to present this to P&Z. This was the first part they saw. It was in a different order before, where they saw our subdivision application and then saw our rezoning right afterwards. And this one was pretty much a no-brainer for them. They saw a large parcel of land that was being subdivided into 2 lots, one of them being reasonably sized around the existing home at around an 8,000 square foot lot, which is actually decent sized for a single family home, very comparable to everything we're seeing in much of our R2 and even actually R1 kind of zones up there. But it works out well with the home being in the corner of the property like that. Well, we did know as owners of the property, the existing access is horrendous. It's unsafe. We did not want to maintain it. We inherited it with the property, and it's too expensive to just move on a whim. So coming in with this application kind of affords the opportunity to clean up a mess that has existed for 80 years in here and provide a new access right across from an existing one, and then that's sufficiently away from 16th Street and also doesn't come in at a funky angle like it does now, or cross over the pedestrian path that the town built well after this access was in place. So it's going to be a huge improvement for safety for everybody by relocating this access to this new location. And along with that, again, utilities really to serve all of this are all in place. There's no need to extend services from off-site. With regards to the irrigation system, I guess the one thing that I would point out, and we're not getting into that in this portion of the application because we don't have a need to develop a whole bunch of irrigation infrastructure out there, but every time a developer extends city utilities from one location into another location, it adds to the city's infrastructure, town's infrastructure, adds to the town's requirements to maintain that in the future. So by what we're looking at here is really, we're trying to make something better for the town in a development situation by proposing a private irrigation system. Now, we could look at, well, the city doesn't have any irrigation around this property. So if we were to extend from an off-site location into this just for simply irrigation purposes, well, that line that comes down, that lateral that comes down would become town ownership until we get to our service point location inside of our property so that anybody else could tap off of it wherever they might need. But they don't need to because they all have it off of their properties in other locations. So we would only be building infrastructure that would ultimately cost the town more money in the future when it has to repair or replace that. So we're really, when this is going to be private, and what we're proposing with that irrigation being private, it means that we would own it, we would maintain it, we would be responsible for all of those future expenses and not the town. So that's a little bit of why it's planned out the way that it is in that.
But the town gets income off of tap fees for irrigation and the monthly fees too. So, I don't really want to miss out on that income.
Yeah, I don't know if the income would ever generate the offsetting cost of replacement. I mean, I work with Trey on this a lot, and it's so darn expensive. But
yeah, but
however,
when one person wants to add a pump, then somebody else wants to add a pump, and I'd rather just keep it all the same.
Oh, the pump would probably. Well, yeah. Again, we can look at this closer as we go along. Right now, we have an existing system that serves that that home. And that, in essence, we're looking to maintain for this. When we come in for development of Lot 2, we can have further discussions about that and its applicability, or, you know, however the town might decide is best fit for everybody involved. The future of Lot 2, you know, we presented to you and showed you a concept of what we're contemplating, again, in grand scheme. A lot of details still have to be worked out. What we came to in our preliminary conclusions in all of this, and why we applied with permit with CDOT, was because in all development, you have to be able to understand what your costs are going to be in order to avoid trouble down the road. And so we needed to be able to understand what the feasible density might be on this property, understanding that Highway 6, Main Street, is controlled by CDOT more than it is by the town, and that CDOT dictates when and if highway improvements are required, such as expanding the roadway width, or adding turning lanes, or anything like, or adding signals, things like that. So we hired a traffic engineer to do that analysis for us. Before, we had, again, back in 2007 through 2011, when we were applying for our previous application, we did the same thing. And the conclusions then were, you know, we were working with townhomes and actually higher density, more homes. And it was determined that we could get to a certain threshold in our mass application, you know, up to 46 residential units inside of there was what we had approved with, or we were on our last stage of approval with the town, but we had approval with P&Z. One more vote on BOT was all we needed. But we could build up to a certain number. I think it was like 30 or 32 of those townhomes before we would cross this threshold that would require us to widen out the highway. Widening out the highway is insanely expensive. The town went through this process right there in front of Come and Go, down to the Red River Inn a few years back. I was working for the town during that time. The cost for the town to improve that one little section there, to widen it out and add those lanes, was over $1 million. You put $1 million on any property in the town of Silt, and you're never going to get any more development. Right now, you have an application coming through next to Come and Go. But the only reason they're even able to do it is because the town already spent the $1 million. If that applicant had been required to spend that $1 million, it's very improbable that you would ever have sold that lot for development use. So when you look at this, we have to avoid that $1 million+ expense. And that $1 million was 7 or so years ago. So you can look at what inflation has done to that, and the cost of construction is probably $1.4 to $1.8 million now to do something like that. Nobody's ever going to go there. So we had to understand what our threshold capacities were going to be. So our traffic engineer looked at that, and we shared what our concepts were. We were looking at kind of a tiny home, smaller unit type concepts, which might be comparable to, you know, could even be like 1 and 2 bedroom apartments or condos or something like that. Again, we're looking what's the possibilities inside of this and the feasibilities. And that number came out to be this 34 that we showed you before. It's not 48. 48, unless the cost of construction drops by 90%, it's never going to happen. So that's what we're really realistically looking at, is somewhere right there in that 34 number. It might not even be able to be a 34 number, but it probably would never, ever, ever be able to be above that. But that's what we're looking at, and that's where the R3 fits, because R2 is under that by too much, which makes it improbable to construct on this property financially. Nobody's getting rich in this scenario up here. We've owned this property since 2007 with a loan. We're trying to make things work. We're like, I feel like we're like just like the rugged pioneers, trying to just keep going and trying to, you know, keep alive through all of this. And that's a piece of what we're doing here. But in the whole process, John and Joy, they've lived here in the town of Silt. They own property in the town of Silt. Our other partner, Dave Moore, lives in the town of Silt. My wife and I, Tracy, live in the town of Silt. We're looking out for the best interests of the town of Silt in our minds as we try to do this, and trying to find creative ways to make it work and make it work out on a positive note. And we've listened to what the neighbors to the north have said. What we've been proposing and are talking about in this is after a lot of contemplation of what we heard back in 2007 to 2011 from those neighbors, yet we still got all that approved. And as we've been trying to rework and rethink these things, what we're looking at here reduces the density from what was before, reduces the traffic from what was before, and still makes it work for us so that we don't lose everything we have just by trying to develop anything whatsoever inside of this. It's really like the working it out scenario and making this to become something that's amicable for all parties given all the circumstances involved. And so with all of that, you know, again, we will be coming back to you with something else. It's gonna, you know, learning that there's gonna have to be a new water plant, and the tap fees are going from $6,700, what they were last year, to you guys are talking $14,000 is what I think I just heard
They went to
in
10,
the future.
they went
10
to
now,
10.5,
but
yeah.
the
10.5.
possibility of 14 by the time we even get back to this. That's the huge hammer and nail, like trying to break into put a lock on this coffin that, that we look at. But, we'll figure something out inside of that. I mean, that's what we do. We persevere and we come up with creative ideas. And, again, no one was ever going to get rich in the first place, and they're not going to get rich now, but we've got to try to find a way in the same time to provide as much affordability inside of this town for the people who not just live here, but their children that are growing up here. And this is a place for those children and the people who are on the lower middle income class to get a starting point inside of our town. And so that's what we're trying to do. We have children that are young. Mine are starting to get to the point where they're growing up. Theirs are still a little bit younger. But as they all grow and mature, we wanted to be able to stay here. And as it's going, with what the inventory is in the town of Silt and with what's being built currently inside of the town of Silt, they don't have a hope. They don't have a chance to stay here. But this will give them a place to get their foot in the door, is what we're trying to build inside of this. And so that's, again, kind of where all this is going, where the densities are, and kind of what our hopes and dreams are inside of all of this. So I hope that answers some of the questions, and give it, I guess it's time for some possible public comment or your questions to us as well.
And also, I almost forgot to, if you don't mind, about with the fire district and stuff, part of the next process, because we gone through this before, we have to work with the fire department too. And so, in fact, last time I think they required us to, right? They required us for our last one to connect from Main Street up to Cactus Drive. So we have to comply with them. I mean, we have to get everybody's approval, from CDOT to Public Services to everybody. So whatever we come up with, it won't be a situation where people can't escape. We'll have to appease them too.
Yeah. And that, as Joy mentions, that was a piece, what you saw in that other presentation with the large parking lot in the loop, that was actually a bit of the thought process and what the problems were for the fire department last time as well. Originally, we went in and it was a cul-de-sac, basically subdivision that had all these townhomes around it. And that's where the fire department said, wow, you've got a lot of townhomes with driveways right on the edge of the road connecting in here, but if we have to come in and fight, we've got to get down there, turn around in the cul-de-sac and hope no one's in our way. Well, this parking lot concept that you saw before helps to resolve a lot of that, because it provides with a very large loop for them to turn, and other points of mobility for them to turn around if necessary and get out of the one location. The one location isn't really that big of a problem on such a short distance because it's right off of the highway road. The problem is many times when we do this with engineering is when you've got an extended length of roadway before you have a turnaround. And so a fire truck has to go all the way down there before they can turn around and come all the way back. And, if you look inside of the town of Silt, there are a lot of developments that existed and were recently approved within the past couple of years that have the same concept that we've got. River Run, KOA, across the highway there, Bell Vista with its current approved phase 1 that's in. It's all the same scenario. It's one in, one out, but it's got the mobility inside of there for them to turn around and come out. And that's what we have here as well. But again, at the end of the day, the fire department gets to see our plan and they get to comment. We would prefer, if they don't require it, not to go through Cactus Drive, because again, we don't want to impede on the neighbors to the north. we're trying to think of them inside of this process. But if the fire department says we have to have a through road, then we'll have to have a through road
Yeah.
at that point.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't a fan of the loop either. I was, north and south entrances were my thoughts.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Or we'll jump over to the public hearing. Okay. All right. The time is 8:49 p.m. and I will open up the public hearing for resolution number 5, series 2023. Persons desiring to make a public comment on this agenda item, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, any phone calls or emails in regards to this agenda item?
No, I did not hear from anyone.
Okay.
I do not show any raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Would anybody in the chambers with us like to speak to this agenda item? All right. Doesn't look like it. So the time is 8:50 p.m. and I will close the public hearing and open up to discussion by the board or a motion.
Any thoughts? I'm good with it.
No discussion here.
I do have a question. Why is, because there's two documents that kind of conflict each other. Is the lot one going to have access to the garage? Or will it not?
No.
So, okay, so the one document that says there will be an easement for use to the garage is,
Well, I'm an easement to the house,
But not
for
the
use of
Not
the
the garage, no.
okay,
The owners of Lot 2 would be using the garage,
okay.
from my understanding.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that was, it seemed kind of weird that wasn't part of the lot to then be able to have use on it, so.
So as a point of order, Mr. Mayor, with reference to the water line, I think an appropriate condition of approval would be that prior to recordation of the final plat, that the water line either be moved to a location on Lot 1, or that an easement be depicted on the plat to encompass the water line.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be added to the recommendations or to Resolution 5.
Okay.
Resolution 5? Yeah.
And didn't we have one more we needed to add to that too? There's the list of 14 in here. I thought we had one more to add.
Is Public Works recommendation for having the entrance taken care of by them on there?
I thought I saw that.
I only say
Well, I
that
mean, I
because
think
I
it
don't
was-
want to repeat a center townhome. So that entrance does need to be theirs, I feel.
Yeah, I
It
think
is.
Mark had it in his comments.
Yeah, it was in my comments, but, and that would be reviewed again anyway at the time of any kind of other land use application or site plan review. I just wanted to put that bug in your ears about that.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, well, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution number 5, series 2023. A resolution approving the final plat for the Autumn Ridge minor subdivision in the town of Silt, Garfield County, state of Colorado, subject to conditions listed in our staff report, in adding the condition that prior to recording of the final plat, the water line be moved to Lot 1, or an easement be added for the existing water service line.
Do we need to add anything for the irrigation or?
I think that comes up in the.
That'll come.
SIA.
Or come
SIA,
later?
yeah.
Okay.
Does that work?
That'll work.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Knott to approve resolution number 5, series 2023. A resolution approving the final plat for the Autumn Ridge minor subdivision in the town of Silt, Garfield County, state of Colorado, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And prior to recordation, the water line will need to be moved to Lot 1 or an easement shown on the plat across lot number 2. That was seconded by Trustee Brittenall. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, guys.
You got the new beard.
I mean, if they moved the water line before the class. We'll go through that. Okay. They're not gonna record this plat. See you in the morning. Sounds good.
Mark, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
You need to turn your screen share on.
Sorry.
Right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Take care.
30 days.
Because it's, with the weather and everything, we're not gonna be able to move that water line for, we're gonna have to coordinate the tray.
Right.
All right, the next item on the agenda is administrator and staff reports, and I will turn this over to Administrator Lehman.
I wanted to just quickly call your attention again to my report where I mentioned Silt water plant news. I had mentioned in there that, you've heard me say it a couple of times tonight during at the end there of the water plant public meeting. But we were, as you know, we were shooting for the January 17th loan cycle, and after some conversation with CDOT, those people, the state, we're probably looking at June 1st. So there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of time for public engagement, and we'll certainly do that. Planning activities as we get more information and begin to learn more, we'll start to really pick up speed, I think. One of the things I wanted to just explore with you all was whether or not it might be a good idea to establish a subcommittee with a couple of board members on it to talk about, go a little bit deeper into the weeds of these proposals. I know you're all very interested in doing that, and so that would be one way to tackle it, or we can just start having more work sessions, and you can consider the information as a board. But I did want to throw out the idea of maybe a subcommittee if you thought that might be helpful. And we've got a few people that deal with the water on a daily basis, so and some that are more interested than others. So certainly willing to take that on if you'd like to do that. We talk about water every day, so in this plant. So we'd be more than willing to welcome you on board into those conversations.
I think the whole board needs to hear all the information.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd rather do it as work sessions
Yeah,
Yes.
I would too.
Me
than
too.
a subcommittee.
Me too.
Sounds good. We'll do it in work sessions. That's all I have.
I have a question. Did that geotech company come to look at that hillside yet? On 16th Street?
Yes, we've looked at it once, they're supposed to come back.
What'd they
We looked
say?
at it with Civil. We're trying to figure it out. The first thing was basically hanging like the chains you see in the canyons, just to keep them from rolling that far out onto the road. So,
Oh,
the
yeah.
chains would just hold them back.
Right.
And we can't lay the hillside back anymore, or we're going to be encroaching on the houses up there to get a slope that would be ideal for not getting it to fall like that.
Oh, okay.
We're going to be into the housing development, and their fences are getting close to their house.
Doesn't that irrigation siphon get close to that too? Or?
Yeah, that irrigation siphon is right in that area also. I can't
What's
remember
that?
exactly
Like,
where.
what is that?
That's where the pump canal that runs on your property,
Yep.
the siphon, it actually goes down into that ravine in 16th and pops back up
Oh, okay.
and comes out over there in Stony Ridge.
It's not part of the problem. It just happens to be there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just in that area. So actually, I think it might be more to the north of the actual hillside
okay.
that's creating most of the problems.
Oh,
But it
alright.
is in that
So-
hillside
okay.
that we'd have to watch for.
Gotcha.
So we're still looking, trying to figure out the best way to.
Fix it.
Yep.
All right. thanks. Oh, last other thing too. When do you guys decide to send out that sweet new street sweeper that we got? You know, like how much snow needs to melt before we send that thing out to go collect all those rocks that we lay down when it's snowy and icy?
Well, that's, you know, the lesser of two evils. Do we go out there now and pick up all that rock and then it snows again and we got to put more down?
But all the
Or
rock
do we
just
leave
gets
some of the
pushed.
rock out there?
Kind of gets pushed to the
It
sidewalk.
does, a lot of it gets pushed to the side.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if we go out there and pick it up, it's more that we're gonna come back and put down. If there is some that is there that can still do a job, you know, we're picking it up, basically throwing it away and then coming back and putting more down the next time it snows.
Yeah, I think we should do
I
that.
mean-
I'll let you guys decide. It's so bad on that road to my house.
Yes,
It all
16th
ends up in
Street
my
gets,
garage, and it's just it's a mess. So, I mean, it's an excessive amount of rock. Like on the sidewalk side,
sidewalk side.
and on the sidewalk, like it's in the gutter. I mean, I don't know if that thing,
It'll pick it up.
can do the one side. If that, I don't know
Oh,
if it's
yeah.
possible, but and maybe
Yeah,
try to
well,
leave some.
it's gonna pick up everything in its path.
Yeah.
I mean, the width of that street sweeper, but I mean, we can do it. That's just one of the reasons we.
I'll let
we
you guys
kinda
decide,
wait.
but it's pretty rocky up there.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a huge cost if we switch to salt as opposed to the gravel? Or,
You know, I haven't checked that lately, but the gravel we have's got an ice melt in it.
oh, okay.
It's a gravel ice melt mix.
It works pretty good, but
Yeah,
mess.
yeah. Okay.
I don't have any other questions for those guys.
Anything else you'd like to touch on?
No,
No.
I don't have anything
Okay.
else.
All right. Trey, anything from you?
Hang on. No, I don't think I have anything. Just, we'll keep you up to date because the water plant thing seems to change on a weekly basis when we talk to the state.
What's that mean though? Like, what do you mean?
Well, like Jeff just said, we had a meeting with the state and it was more people from the state than what we were meeting with.
Yeah.
And the ones were saying, no, you're good at the 17th, what you're doing is fine. And when we brought these others into the meeting, they said, no, it's not good enough. You're not into enough details, you can't make application at this time.
Oh, okay.
And pushed us back, so
Maybe that's a blessing in disguise.
it
I
could
think
be.
it might be. Yeah.
And they did say that the loan forgiveness should still be there in June because originally they told us you need to hit January because there won't be loan forgiveness in June. And now they're telling us it'll still be there.
Good.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have a thought on that. Like, you know, in the staff report, which I really like, and I think it's on this one right here. You know, like, I think people read the part where it says Mann, to talk about Jim Mann, that the proposed water treatment plant will cost close to $28 million. The average customer bill was thought to increase from 45, right? So I think they read that and they stop. And then they don't read the very next paragraph that says, after the presentation, the trustees were clear with the consultants and the staff that the price for the improvements was too high and directed that the efforts be made to reduce the scope of the price of the project. I wonder if it's possible that we could like switch the order of those two. I'm serious. Like, I really do think that people read it,
You have a point.
freak out, and don't see the rest. And I think that's really hurting like what we're trying to say to people. So I really think it might be worth just either grouping those together or putting the other part first, you know, saying, and this is why, because this is what was presented. I don't know. It's something
Well,
to think about.
Sure, and we've been talking about this for literally a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And only when you write like that do you get the input that you desire. And so I think that's why, we wrote it that way in the first place. But I take your point, and
Yeah.
now we have people's attention. I think it's fine to write it a different way. It's
For sure.
fine. I mean, we'll be writing fairly frequently and with new information as it becomes available, and
Yep.
hopefully we'll be scaling that number down.
Do we need to discuss about mailing that newsletter out to people so they get it?
I
How do
don't
we
know
do
how,
that?
I
How do we get to those folks? We've been talking about this forever.
Well, I have a note jotted down that, maybe we can print 10 copies and have them at town hall and they can drop by and get
Stop by
them.
and pick them up.
That's a good
I
idea.
like that idea better than trying to mail it out, just
But how do
because
we-
that gets.
How do we tell them that it's down here?
We mail their utility bills every month and they don't even read the one paragraph that we put on it.
I wonder if
Mail
we could.
You
newsletters.
could
I
add
don't-
that on the paragraph utility bill, let them know that the newsletter's printed and it's available at the town hall if you don't have access to internet to view it there.
That's the way I would do it. I would
That sounds
either
good.
do an insert or put it on the bill.
Yeah, right.
I would do it that way, because if we do an insert, then we're sending out to a whole bunch of people that may not even look at it, whereas if they want it, have them come get it.
Yeah.
And mailing stuff is not cheap.
No.
No.
Especially a multi-page newsletter.
Yep. It's gonna turn into sending our water bill out, it's gonna cost us $3 per person.
Well, I guess we rolled in updates from the board and board comments, so. Trustee Hanrahan.
Oh, sure, now.
Now
Now when it doesn't matter.
There's nobody here.
There's no pressure.
You're not the first one to say that today. Challenges were made and accepted, that's all I'm saying. Just briefly, great discussion and meeting with folks tonight, showing up for the water plant meeting. Good presentation. I think we have a lot of work to do. And I, like the rest of us, I think are welcoming the extra time that we're gonna have and not having to try and get this over some sort of a financial finish line by January 17th.
Yes.
I think we're gonna have all we can handle to get it done by June. So looking forward to that process. I'm glad we also all agreed to hear it in work sessions. I think I'd like to participate as much as possible, and I don't know if that could happen with the subcommittee.
Right.
No, with a big ticket item like this, yeah, I feel
We gotta have all hands on deck all the
Yeah.
time. Agreed. That's it from me.
Some feedback from some of the people in the hallway about the water meeting. They felt like they got quieted, that it was an hour by design, so we could say we're moving into our meeting, no more talking. So maybe like just a water plant presentation Q&A with us, just for that, without a board meeting attached to it in the future. And then I'm pretty passionate about this place, about town of Silt, so that's where my stand is always very vocal, and so that's where I'm at. I appreciate the respect that I believe we all give each other. We all have different views and different ideas on how to make this happen, and I'm grateful for that. I'm glad I'm proud to sit on this board.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Trustee Brittenell?
Just thanks for all the work the whole town's doing, and we got a lot of work to do, and to just keep up as much communication as possible. And if people have ideas, obviously, as people ask about how they get them, if you have any suggestions, ideas about how things should be in town, either A, come to the meetings and you can talk during the public comments, let us know right then and there, or bring them in and drop them off at town hall, and Trey and Jeff and whoever it pertains to would be more than happy to look at it and take it into consideration.
Trustee Clausen?
I guess, yeah, my comments are, there's, the town was on Facebook last week, and my comments are, instead of just automatically going and trashing the town on Facebook, come in and talk with us. Come to a board meeting, go talk to the town administrator. I mean, the doors are always open, so there should be somebody, or even the public works director, there should be somebody who can answer questions around here, as opposed to, just immediately going to Facebook, because, things like that, usually nothing good ever happens from things like that. It just gets people all worked up and riled up and everything. So, if citizens would, please come to the town and talk with us at the town, that would be great. And I was sitting there thinking about it, because And yes, we don't govern based off of Facebook. I get that. But I'm sitting there thinking, there were a lot of comments on, transparency or accountability. And I just had a couple of thoughts that, they're just little minute items. Like at one time, the town used to post, a list of expenditures in the paper. And I don't believe we do that. And I'm not saying go back to put it in the paper, but at least have it on the town's website of the monthly expenditures and everything, just so if there are citizens out there that, you know, we can use the website as a database for things like that. And, like have the employee handbook on the website, then that way if there's questions of, what days off do these people have, or how do they, contribute to retirement or something like that. I'm just saying, doing things just to give more information out there. And, one thing that comes up a lot or what are employees making? And obviously I'm not saying put names out there, but City of Glenwood on their website, they have a list of all of the positions that the city has, and they have, and with that list it says, with the salaries, it says low, high, and the median. Just so if people are kind of curious what somebody makes, they can go to the website and go, oh, okay, yes, it doesn't do specifics, and I wouldn't, and I'm not saying, names with their exact number, but at least it gives people a general idea of what so-and-so makes. And, and I've noticed on the town's website, the municipal code, it's kind of hard to see. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom of it. So I'd like to make some sort of tab where the municipal code is up higher, just so, if people are curious. And I think and yes, you have to have internet to look at it, but I'm just trying to think of ways to answer some people's questions or concerns without them having to, and I just said, yes, please come to us. But, I'm trying to add a bunch of information to the website just so people can find answers on their own if they want, because some people, don't necessarily want to talk to somebody. They can go on the website and go, oh, okay, then this answers my question. So it's just things like that. And, looking at the website, it did have a list of like building permits and everything, but maybe have a list of, business licenses, and so forth. And I don't know if we want, how much detail you want to do, but, then that way, you have, okay, then that as, business. Anyway, it's just, I'm just trying to think of ways just to add more information. And I know, it'd probably cost a little bit more on the website, but in the big scope of things, it probably wouldn't cost that much more, so those are just my thoughts.
I thought you brought up a good point about social media. I mean, it's the point I made to the people that were here. We all live here. Like, we're all subject to all this too. So, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but probably everybody else. I don't have any other ulterior motive of being on this board than to just try to figure out what's in the best interest of the town. So,
not for fame and wealth.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that I went to JC Brunch for breakfast. It was really good. So we should all go there and support them. It's a nice new place that Silt has. I wanted to bring up one comment. Maybe we can discuss this at our next board meeting. But for me, I think that we really need to discuss getting a second opinion on this water plant. And the reason I say that is because every time I ask the question, and we had that question here a number of times of why we can't engineer our current water plant to meet the needs currently and the projected growth, my opinion is that question gets deflected every time and gets redirected into a brand new 20-something million water plant. And I do think that it would serve us and the town of Silt as a benefit to get a second opinion on the engineering of this water plant. So we could discuss that, whether that's something that we are willing and able to do and afford, but it may have a lot of value to what we're currently discussing. So we're getting more than one opinion of what needs to be done over there. So that's it.
I agree on searching for a second opinion on the construction cost of it. I think the company we have is already going to do our design and engineering for us. You could definitely have a second company, big construction cost. I think there's a pretty simple reason why we can't re-engineer what we have to make it work for a new plant, is because we can't take a plant offline to build a new one to put online.
Okay.
So we can't put a new plant in the old plant without taking the old plant offline, and then we have no water.
I guess I was thinking more on the lines of not having to replace the entire plant.
The,
Yeah.
if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The plant that is over there is far enough out of date that the technology is no longer used. So that's one of the big issues with our plant is parts and pieces to keep it running. I don't know if it was discussed in this one earlier, but the pre-treatment is what's really needed for the skids over there.
Yeah.
And the pre-treatment, I think Patrick said, is almost 2/3 of the cost of a new plant. So 2/3 of that 28 million that's getting thrown around is pre-treatment that we need anyway, whether we put a new filtration in front, behind it, or run into these skids that are almost to the end of their useful life.
Okay.
That we can't get any more, even if we pre-treated the water, we're not gonna get any more production out of these skids. What
Okay.
we're gonna get out of it will be minimal and not, you're talking maybe an extra 5 to 10 gallons a minute.
If the pre-tree would have been built in the first place like it should have been, it sounds like, it might be a little bit different story, but it wasn't.
Yes.
Was there any further information gathered from what we were sent from that email about the original engineering company, some of the claims that, I mean, these people, they remember what they were told about this original water plant. Like, do we have any historical records of the agreement, the documentation?
The 50-year guarantee was gonna last and all this other stuff.
And it may not matter in the overall sense of what we need to do, but if we have that data and that information, it would be great to know it and see it,
I will research that. I'm sure Sheila's record somewhere we have that from that, but I don't know that the 50 years was ever put out there. I don't see any water plant, like this one, they're saying the building should be good for 50 years, but the equipment's only gonna be 20, even on this new plant.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to, sorry, I didn't mean to overtake.
No, you're fine, yeah.
Important for us as a town and as the staff to find that information so we can at least make it available, because we're getting asked about it a lot.
Yeah.
yes.
And for, I think all of us, we weren't even here when that was going down.
No.
Part of this board may have lived here,
No.
but not a part of the decision-making process, so.
Well, unfortunately, it's not like that person that said that's gonna have to pay for it. It's just-
No.
But I think that's what some people hope.
I tell you, like, I definitely don't do that with any intention of trying to
No, I
find
know that.
anybody liable. I look at it from, I guess, the other perspective of, like, folks coming to us and saying, hey, like, this is what we were told. it wasn't that long ago. And I think if we just brush that off and don't even try to make an attempt to find it, it just comes off as disingenuous, Like, I think we should really see what we have in our records for that.
I will see what I can find. And also, for your, Mr. Mayor, the building process, that's what that construction manager at risk that we're bringing on in February. It's so it's a construction firm that'll work side by side with the engineer to try to whittle away at the price. As they're designing it, his job is to look at it and say, no, steel is cheaper now, let's put a steel building up. Or if you do a slab on grade, you're gonna save this much money compared to a foundation footing wall type stuff, so.
Right. And I 100% get that, but the difference
okay.
could be that a steel building is 30% cheaper than a masonry building. So he's going to go steel, but only mark the price down 15%. So he still has that opportunity to make
Money.
an extra 15% while giving the town a deal.
That's not my understanding of the CMAR process. I think in order to qualify for the federal grants, the CMAR works with you along the way of the design, but it still has to go out to bid once final
Yeah, he's not the
plans-
builder.
He might.
But he could be, but he's not.
He could be, but
Yeah.
it's gotta go out to public bid.
But still, I mean, as long as it has to go
That's
to-
my understanding.
See, my understanding was he comes on and he's the at-risk contractor. So he's saying, I can do it for this. And if there's cost overruns, he's gonna have to eat that.
The
and if you're not getting federal funding, that may be the case. How that process has been explained to me is that the federal grant process requires competitive bidding, and so you can use the CMAR to try and, like you said, whittle down the cost, find the value engineering opportunities. That CMAR then has the inside track, because they've been working on the project for 6-8 months or whatever through the design process. But at the end of the day, it has to go out to competitive bid, and if they bid it too fat, they're going to lose the bid.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to make sure that's how that process has to go. 'Cause I've been understanding
That's
this,
for you
the
to follow.
CMAR.
We'll double check.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about a mill levy and bonds? I think I brought that up
So
before.
the problem with mill levy is you will bust your enterprise.
Mm.
And that then, so currently, in order to borrow money as an enterprise, you do not have to go out and get a general obligation vote. So you, at an election, because the repayment of the bonds is guaranteed by a rate covenant that the ratepayers will pay whatever's needed to pay off the bonds. And that is extremely beneficial for a utility that has borrowing needs from time to time, because that can be conducted simply by the Board of Trustees. Once you go out for general obligation debt, a mill levy or a sales tax, you'll bust your enterprise and you will lose the ability to borrow money without going in subsequent elections to the voters for approval.
Yeah,
And an example, so it is done occasionally. Your neighbor to the west, they deliberately busted their enterprise and imposed a 0.75 cent sales tax specifically to fund their water treatment plant, because they knew that sales tax was going to be paid 50% by people who didn't live in Rifle.
Unfortunately, our sales tax isn't 50% people that don't live
No,
here.
yours is very, very
No.
different. Yeah.
Kyle, could I get clarity on your question about, you didn't feel like you were getting a straight answer, you felt like you were, that every time that question is asked, it's deflected?
Yeah.
I want to know specifically what that question is so we can answer it for you.
I'll tell you. I think part of it is my ignorance of how that whole thing operates. Okay? What I'm looking for is an engineer that's willing and able to work on our behalf to figure out a solution that we can afford. I still think there is one. I don't know what it is. But every time I bring that question up to these guys,
What's the specifically, what's the question?
I think, I guess maybe Mayor Reich will answer it. Why can't we engineer this in a way that we can still utilize parts of what we have and get this thing to have some redundancy and some capability to provide the water that we need? I mean, maybe we need to have a more in-depth discussion about this 1/3 capacity for our growth in 20 years. I don't know, right? So right now, the issue is if our skid or membrane, one of them goes down, we can only produce half of what we need on a peak day, right? But the water plant works. It's making clean water. So it's not on the fritz, as what was in that stupid Post-Independent article that was posted online. At least I've been told it's not on the fritz by, in these meetings.
No, it makes clean water, yes.
Yes.
It's just not making
Yeah, but
enough
it's,
water, and it's for growth. And if there was, one of the skids went down for an extended period of time, then we would be in trouble. As far as being able to produce enough water.
Right.
In the water world, it's like one little failure can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
Where we're at right now, one little smallest failure, which is huge.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, right now
Sure,
we're
sure,
okay.
sure.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a feeling that I get that, these guys are hyper fixated on this $28 million project that's coming down the pipeline, and they're just not taking into consideration there's 3,500 people in this town that can't afford a $28 million water plant.
Right.
That's it.
Well, we heard you loud and clear, and that's what's in that paragraph in the newsletter article, right?
But everything's
We'll move it to the
everything's
top.
moving towards it. Like I
Well,
feel like
no,
we're
I
on
don't-
this
no,
path
I
to
don't think so.
getting to a point of no return.
No.
And
You make the decisions.
well, I understand that.
You're gonna
But-
pull the trigger on whatever that price is gonna be. And if the decision is we're not gonna do anything, then that's the decision you'll make.
But Kyle's point, I'm going to paraphrase for you,
Okay.
is that you don't feel, and again, correct me if you think I'm wrong, you don't feel like you're getting all the information you need to make the best decision because no one is answering your questions about alternatives.
Correct. And I think, I don't know if you got the email, but I would like to go back out to the water plant with the engineers and walk through that plant. And I want them to show me where that water comes in, where it goes. I want to know what this, and this is. I want to know what needs to be torn out. I want to know, I need to know
And that's a great idea.
moving forward. Like, I need to know how that thing works. You know? And even in the presentation that he gave, like there's so many acronyms on that thing. I bet half the people didn't even know what he was talking about. Like, I don't know. I forgot what TOC means. I bet nobody else knows what TOC means. So a lot of that is taken for granted, I think, in the delivery of this information, that they know a lot about this and a lot of us don't to that degree. And that's a big decision. So maybe I need more information. Like, I need more information. So.
And I still would love to see a cost breakdown. Skid 1, this much. Skid 2 is this much. Concrete for tank is this much. Like, we've seen a number of $28 million, but we have no clue how they even got there.
Mm-hmm.
Is it $7 million and the rest is cash in someone's pocket? Like, how do we get to $28 million?
Well, these are engineers' estimates. As you
Yes.
know, they
They-
look
they
at a
don't give-
book to come up with those numbers, so
Yeah.
this is not the contract detail yet.
Right.
But the
It's a-
breakdown that you're asking for is in the report.
There is a breakdown in the
So
report.
it does give you that information. I mean, again, it's an engineer's estimate.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where we
And-
are today.
Until the CMAR comes on, you probably won't see a specific breakdown on costs until it's further along in the design.
Okay.
You'll probably see it before June.
Well, and that's what we need to. I need to see that way before June. I mean, that's. I don't care about the $28 million number. I want to know how we get there. $20 million. It's a no matter what you show me. I
Yeah.
need to know why we're at $28 million.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with some critical path questions though, because the engineers are gonna really start blowing through money on design, once you start the detailed level of construction drawings that you're talking about. And if you are looking at an alternatives analysis, I mean, you're probably 3-4 months out. You gotta find the engineer, you gotta do a bid. You are then gonna have to get them up to speed. They are busy, they're gonna have other clients they're serving. You're gonna be months out before you get that information. So,
I have a thought related to alternatives. Sorry to interrupt. And it's a result of a thing I've been working on for a client, and that is phasing the implementation over a longer period of time. We talked about breaking ground next year and finishing 2 years after that, I think was what they presented earlier. To your point, Kyle, can we get the systems in place for the existing residents, knowing that the growth is coming further down the road, not pay for it now? Pay for it in 4 years, pay for it in 6 years. Even though we know it's going to be at an increased cost, it's going to reduce the capital impact right now of trying to find $28 million. Is there an opportunity for us to do a phased implementation of all of these related systems?
great
But I
question.
thought he said we would start with 2 skids, then add the third one at a later date.
Because they have to be redundant. You have to have redundancy.
So.
Okay, then can we do 2 out of the, then can we do 2 out of 3?
That's all they're doing right
Also
now.
not a water expert, but
But
are there
you're-
ways
All right,
for
it's
us
a good
to
question.
phase this implementation to offset some of the capital, some of that pain and suffering from our 3,500 existing residents and make it a more
Put it off until it's
understandable,
4,500.
feasible? Costs are gonna go up. Can we make it 18% instead of 118%,
Yeah, right.
whatever
No,
it
it's a
is?
good question.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can postpone because the skids are. They're meant to be expandable, you know, so that you can grow over time. But your building and your pre-treatment, that's a fixed cost up front. You're going to build that to a capacity.
Yeah, right.
And that's
and,
2/3
and if
of
the
the
engineers
cost.
are saying that the pre-treatment is how much of the cost?
2/3.
Like 2/3 of the cost.
That's
Yeah.
where the problem is it's not the skids, it's not that part. The biggest cost is the concrete and the pretreatment.
The
Getting
pre-treatment,
it set
yeah.
up.
And if we're pulling out of the river, we have to have the pre-treatment.
Then we find a phased implementation that saves $3 or $4 million. I'm not talking about saving 90%. I'm talking, this is a big number.
But
And
even
being
at-
able
but
to
even at
carve
two-
$3 million off is a big
Yeah, no, you're
discount.
right. Even at 2/3 of the cost, like that other third that we'd be saving is almost $10 million. It's huge. That's a huge amount.
I think that's a factor we should be looking
Right.
at, a
So-
phased implementation.
So Jeff, I think maybe when I pose that question to our engineers, is we're not getting any of these types of ideas or possibilities, right? They just seem to brush it all off and say no. It's like,
Here are your 4
here's-
options,
yeah.
22 to 28 million, pick from the list.
here's your shiny new thing you can't afford, or like, yeah, and that's it. Like,
So you're thinking like they do the pretreatment thing and then funnel that pretreated water into our existing plant for a while and then build the new plant that part later, or
wouldn't you love to have that option and discuss that and see what that looks like and see where that gets us?
Right.
With
What are
rates
the
and
engineering
costs.
I think
risks?
part of the
What are
problem
the
is
financial
that
benefits?
our current skid system is so out of date. As Trey said, that it's getting harder and harder to find parts for it. That part needs replaced too. So once you do that, then it's all turns into one big project.
Let's come up with a time where we can go down there, and maybe we can all talk about this while we're looking at that thing.
And we may be down there and you have the realization of going, wow, yep, that's where we need to be. Yeah.
Possibly.
A recommendation, you was talking about getting the engineers to talk into it.
Yeah.
I would recommend you talk to the guys that are running the plant.
Yeah.
They know more about that plant than these engineers do.
Oh, perfect.
On a daily basis, on running the plant and the actual procedures.
And we're already
I mean, the
paying those guys to
engineers
be
know
there.
the plant, they know how it works, but
Paying those engineers
you
to
need
come
to
and talk
talk
to us is
to
expensive.
the 4 people over there that's running that plant every day.
Are they going to tell us the same thing the engineers are telling us?
Maybe, maybe not. They understand it and they're doing their best to keep it running until we get.
Do any of those operators currently live within Silt town limits? Like how many?
3
of
out
those?
of 4.
3 out of 4. Okay, that's good. I mean, those people have the buy-in that we do.
They have a vested interest.
You bet. So
Field trip.
anyway,
Well, we'll set that up. We'll do a tour. We'll also go back and look at the alternatives discussion that we've had, and we'll go over it again. We'll make sure you get a bound and printed copy of the Dewberry study, because I don't know that we've put that out in print.
No,
We sent it
had
out
it.
electronically. I think now's the time that you get a copy for a little bedside reading.
yep.
And look that over. And you remember that we brought Dewberry on after Tony Zancanella had been kind of working on this for a while. And every time he would look into a specific issue that would help him try to figure out what the next step was, he found that the plant was lacking in some capacity in terms of measuring something or understanding what we were doing over there. And so he'd go back to the drawing board and he would work with Trey to figure out what piece or part we needed to buy to make it, so we could get that information. And so that's what we've been doing for 18 months, is trying to probably 18 months, maybe longer.
Maybe longer.
To get all that going. And then we got to the point where we were looking at those things like the pond and all these things, and he realized this was more than he could chew. And so we decided that's when we brought Dewberry in to try to help us make heads or tails of the whole thing. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah.
All of those alternatives at this point, I shouldn't say all of the alternatives, but all of the ones that we looked at before have been evaluated. Doesn't mean there aren't more out there. In fact, Trey and I went out and met with the operators last week and said, what are we missing? Are we missing anything? What other kinds of things should we be looking at? And so they're spending some time right now just thinking about it, writing stuff down, doing some online research on their own. And we're going to get together with the engineers here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to bat it around again. So we're not done.
No.
With we're not zeroed in on a $28 million number, despite what this said. What this says is we want to make sure we're lined up with the state to be reimbursed as soon as we are physically able to start being reimbursed for all these engineering costs.
Right.
Because we've got a bunch now.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make sure that the loan will pay us back for those things. And the sooner we pass this resolution, the sooner we'll be able to do that. And we'll, in 2 weeks' time, we'll bring it back to you, and we'll be more apt to really to give you as much information on that as we can.
All right.
But yeah, we're not in it on a fast track to nowhere here. You obviously have to be comfortable with where we're going, and you're not. So we're gonna do what we can to get you there.
Cool. All right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Respond to Chris's comments.
Not yet.
You've got a meeting.
Amy,
Amy
yes.
has a
Amy's
comment.
been waiting patiently.
Yes.
I really have. So I just wanted to let Chris know that we still do disbursements. We put them in the paper for all
okay.
of our expenditures for the month. And then we also do have a list of all business licenses and all contractors licenses on the website already.
Oh,
So
okay.
those 3 things are already happening.
Is that in the rifle paper, the Glenwood one? Just 'cause
We put it in the
I-
Post Independent, yes, Sheila?
No.
Yes,
Evidently I
the
missed it.
Post Independent, Chris.
Okay. All right, well, thanks, Treasurer Tucker.
All right. Attorney Sawyer, you had your hand up there for a second. Did you have a point you wanted to make?
We have an executive session.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Yes, we do.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Can't adjourn.
All right. The time is now 9:37 p.m. and I will make a motion to go into an executive session for the conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on a specific legal question under CRS section 24-6-4024B in regards to the Holiday Inn Express lease.
I second.
All right. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Knott. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we'll take a minute here and get into our executive session.
Nice.
I wish I had
All right, it looks like we are unmuted now, so the time is now 10:03 p.m. and the executive session has concluded. No formal action was taken in the executive session. The participants in the executive session were no one entered the executive session and no one left the executive session. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violations of the open meetings law, I'd ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, the next item agenda is adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Brittenall to adjourn the
I'll get it.
meeting, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Knott. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I guess it's too late to nominate Jeff.
Fun fact.